Looking back, I should have seen the signs of this chaos earlier. They were all there, scattered like breadcrumbs leading to my own personal hell. But when you're at the top of your game, running a multi-billion-dollar company, you tend to miss the little things, even when those little things are destroying your life. That morning started like any other at Varon Tower. I was reviewing quarterly reports in my office when Valeria buzzed in. "Mr. Varon, your wife is here to see you." Liana never visited the office unannounced. She had her own empire to run. The company's international relations division she built from scratch after leaving her art gallery behind. "Send her in," I said, already feeling something was off. She walked in wearing that black Chanel dress I'd given her for our anniversary. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, each step precise and measured. But her smile, something about it didn't reach her eyes. "Alex, darling," she said, using the nickname only she was allowed to use. "Can we talk?" Of course. I gestured to the leather chair across from my desk, but she chose to perch on the edge of my desk instead. Closer, more intimate, more dangerous. "The family dinner tonight," she started, her fingers playing with the pin on my desk. "I think we should cancel." "Cancel?" Mom would have a fit. You know how she is about these traditions. She paused, and for a moment, I saw something flicker across her face. Fear? Guilt? "I'm not feeling well." I reached for her hand, but she pulled away slightly, so slightly that anyone else might have missed it. I didn't. "What's really going on, Liana?" "Nothing. I'm just tired." She stood up abruptly. "I've been working late on the European merger." "With Damien?" The words came out before I could stop them. My brother had been spending a lot of time with her division lately. She stiffened. "Yes, with Damien. He's the head of international operations, Alex. We work together." I know. I held up my hands in surrender. "I just miss you." Her expression softened. "I miss you too." She leaned down and kissed my cheek, her perfume lingering in the air. "I'll see you at home later?" After she left, I sat there for a long time, staring at the door. The dull ache in my stomach that had been bothering me for weeks seemed to intensify. Valeria came in with coffee and her usual stack of papers. She'd been with me for 5 years, and sometimes I thought she knew me better than my own family. "Everything okay?" she asked, setting down the coffee. "Valeria, have you noticed anything different about Liana lately?" She hesitated. In that hesitation, I heard everything she wasn't saying. "Mr. Varon." "Alexander," she corrected herself. "Maybe you should talk to her." I just did. "No," she shook her head. "Really talk to her." I was about to press further when my phone buzzed. Dr. Sullivan's office. I'd been avoiding his calls for days, but the pain was getting worse. "I need to take this," I told Valeria. She nodded and left, but not before giving me a look that said she had more to say. "Dr. Sullivan," I answered. "Alexander, we need to discuss your test results. In person." "I'm fine, Ethan. Just some stress and—" "Today, Alexander. It's important." The gravity in his voice made my stomach clench. "All right, I'll come by after the family dinner." "Don't delay this," he warned. I hung up and looked out my office window at the city below. From up here, everything looked perfect, ordered, controlled, just like my life used to be. The rest of the day passed in a blur of meetings and calls. By evening, I was at the Varon estate, our family's mansion in the hills. These weekly dinners were my mother's way of keeping the family united, though lately they felt more like carefully orchestrated performances. Damien arrived first, looking impeccable in his tailored suit. My little brother, always trying to outshine everyone. "Alex," he greeted me with our usual hug, but something felt off. His grip was too tight, too long. "How's the European merger going?" I asked casually. "Smooth as silk," he grinned. "Liana's been instrumental in—" He stopped as she walked in. My wife stood in the doorway, wearing a different dress now. Red. Damien's favorite color, a detail I'd only remember later. "Speaking of the devil," Damien said, his eyes lingering on her a second too long. Mother swept in before I could analyze that look further. Beatrice Varon, the family matriarch, commanding attention with her mere presence. "Children," she said, though we were all pushing 40. Shall we eat? During dinner, I watched them. The way Damien's hand brushed Liana's when reaching for the wine. The way she looked at everything except him. The way my mother's eyes darted between them, knowing something I didn't. Alex, darling, Liana's voice cut through my thoughts. You've barely touched your food. Not hungry, I muttered, the pain in my stomach making itself known again. Are you feeling all right? Damien asked, concern in his voice. You look pale. I'm fine. The lie came easily. Just tired from work. Mother set down her fork. You work too hard, Alexander. Your father was the same way before? She didn't finish the sentence. She never did when talking about Dad. After dinner, I made an excuse about a work emergency and drove to Dr. Sullivan's office. The building was dark except for his window. He was waiting for me, his face grave. Alexander, he said, holding a folder. We need to talk about your condition. I sat down, my perfect life about to shatter in more ways than one. The clock on Dr. Sullivan's wall ticked like a time bomb. Stage 3. 6 months. Maybe less. Alexander? Dr. Sullivan's voice seemed distant. Did you hear what I said about the treatment options? I nodded mechanically, but my mind was elsewhere. On Liana's face this morning when she kissed me goodbye, had there been guilt in her eyes? Pity? Or was it relief? We should tell your family, he continued. A support system is crucial during... No. The word came out sharper than intended. Not yet. On my way home, I pulled over at our spot, the cliff lookout where I'd proposed. The city lights blurred as memories flooded back. Liana and Damien at last week's charity gala, their hands brushing as they reached for champagne. I dismissed it then. Now, my phone buzzed. Liana, working late. Don't wait up. Love you. When did those words start sounding hollow? I drove to Varon Tower instead of home. The security guard nodded as I walked in. The elevator ride to Liana's floor felt endless. Her office was dark, but there was a coffee cup on her desk, still warm. 2 lipstick marks on the rim, her signature red, and something darker. My phone rang. Valeria. Mr. Varon, those expense reports? What did you find? Hotel charges. The Grand. Room 1542. Booked under AC Enterprises. Damien Varon. When? 3 times last month, including tonight. I hung up and sat in Liana's chair, running my fingers over her desk calendar. Little hearts marked certain dates. Meeting dates. With Damien, my brother. The kid who once broke his arm trying to be like me. Who cried at my wedding. Who held me when Dad died. Another text from Liana. Miss you. Sleep well. Love you. In the background of her selfie, I caught a reflection. A hotel room. But not the Grand. The lake house master bedroom. They weren't even trying to hide anymore. Or they were hiding so badly they wanted to be caught. I started the car, then stopped. In my rearview mirror, Damien's Porsche pulling into the parking garage. Liana in the passenger seat, laughing at something. I slumped down, watching as my brother helped my wife out of his car. His hand lingered on her waist. She leaned into him. Then Damien's phone rang. His face changed as he listened. He looked scared. They hurried inside, not like lovers now, but like conspirators. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. Mr. Varon? Evelyn from legal. There's something you need to know about your father's will. The inheritance clause? I made my decision. Dr. Sullivan first, then the lake house. But as I pulled out, I didn't notice Damien watching from his office window, phone to his ear. He knows. We need to move faster. I drove straight to Dr. Sullivan's office. He was waiting, looking troubled. Alexander, there's something strange about your test results. The progression rate, it doesn't make sense. What do you mean? These numbers, they're inconsistent. Like someone. His phone rang. He checked it, frowned. I need to take this. Wait here. He stepped out. Through the door I heard fragments. Yes, Mrs. Varon. No, I haven't told him. Of course, I understand the company's position. My blood ran cold. I left before he returned. The lake house was dark when I arrived. Their cars were parked carelessly. They must have rushed inside. I could hear voices from the deck. He's getting suspicious, Liana was saying. The doctor called. Calm down, Damien's voice. Everything's in place. The board meeting is tomorrow. Once we present the evidence. But what if he finds out before? He won't. 6 months, Liana. That's all we need. Once he's gone, the company's ours. The inheritance clause is clear. If he dies while in control, everything goes to charity. But if he's declared unfit before, I'd heard enough. I stepped onto the deck. They froze. Alexander, Liana whispered. We can explain. You won't have to. I held up my phone. Recording. The board meeting tomorrow should be interesting. Damien lunged for my phone. In the struggle, pain shot through my stomach. I doubled over. The last thing I saw was Liana's face, genuine concern mixing with calculation. Then darkness. I woke up to white walls and beeping machines. Hospital. The pain in my stomach had subsided to a dull throb. Mr. Veron? A nurse appeared. Your wife and brother are outside. They've been here all night. Don't let them in. My voice was hoarse. Call Valeria Cruz. Only Valeria? The nurse hesitated, then nodded. Through the window, I could see Liana pacing, Damien comforting her. Such a convincing performance. Valeria arrived within 20 minutes, carrying my laptop and phone. They tried to delete the recording, she said, setting up the laptop. But I had it backed up to our secure server the moment you started recording. Old habits from the corporate espionage case last year. I could have kissed her. There's more, she continued, lowering her voice. I did some digging after you collapsed. Your medical records have been accessed multiple times from Damien's computer. And Dr. Sullivan's gotten 3 large payments from a shell company linked to your brother. The test results. Likely tampered with. I've requested the original lab reports. The door opened. Dr. Harper, not Sullivan, walked in. Mr. Veron, I'm your new physician. Dr. Sullivan has taken a leave of absence. More like fled the country, Valeria muttered. Dr. Harper reviewed my charts, frowning. These previous diagnoses, they don't match your current tests. The stage 3 cancer indicators appear to have been falsified. The room spun. I'm not dying? No. You have a treatable ulcer, likely stress-induced. With medication, you'll be fine in a few weeks. A laugh bubbled up in my throat. Then another. Soon I was laughing so hard tears streamed down my face. Alexander? Mother's voice. She stood in the doorway, her face ashen. I just heard. I had no idea they would go this far. You knew? The laughter died. She sat heavily in the chair beside my bed. I knew about the affair. I confronted them last month. They said they were in love, that they'd tell you after the merger. And the company? The inheritance clause? What inheritance clause? Valeria pulled up a document on my laptop. According to this, if Alexander dies while serving as CEO, his shares go to a children's charity your late husband supported. Mother's hands started shaking. That's not. Charles would never. She pulled out her phone, dialing quickly. Jonathan? Get to the hospital. Now, bring the original will. Within an hour, our family lawyer arrived with a thick folder. This, he held up a document, is your father's actual will. And this, another document, is the falsified version filed with the company. The signatures, they're forged. By whom? Based on the digital trail, Valeria interjected, the fake will was created on Damien's laptop 3 months ago. A commotion outside interrupted us. Liana was arguing with security. He's my husband. You can't keep me out. I nodded to the guard. Let her in. Time to end this. She rushed to my bedside, tears streaming. Alex, baby, I was so worried. Save it. I turned my laptop around, showing the recording from the lake house. Explain. The color drained from her face. Let me help, I said coldly. You and Damien doctored my medical records to make it look like I was dying. You bribed Dr. Sullivan to confirm the diagnosis. Then you planned to use my deteriorating health to have me declared unfit at tomorrow's board meeting, making Damien interim CEO. After my convenient death, you'd both inherit the company instead of it going to charity. How am I doing so far? It wasn't like that. We really do love each other. Where's Damien now? He had to. Run? Valeria suggested. Airport security footage shows him boarding a private jet an hour ago. With most of your joint savings, Mrs. Varon. Liana collapsed into a chair. He said he was getting lawyers. Oh, there will be lawyers, I promised. Along with the SEC, FBI, and every other agency interested in corporate fraud, medical record falsification, and attempted hostile takeover. Alex, please. I'll tell you everything. Start with when. When did you stop loving me and start seeing me as an obstacle? Her silence was answer enough. Mother stood. I'll handle the board meeting tomorrow. Valeria, contact security. Change all passwords, freeze all accounts. Already done, Mrs. Varon. I looked at my wife, soon-to-be ex-wife, and felt only emptiness. You should have just asked for a divorce. Would you have given me the company? No, but you would have kept your freedom. As security led her away, my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Varon, this is Evelyn again. About the inheritance clause, there's something else you should know. Your father left a letter, to be opened only if someone tried to take the company by force. 3 a.m. The hospital room smells of antiseptic and midnight regrets. Dad's letter sits unopened in my trembling hands. Outside, crickets chirp their lonely songs, reminding me of summer nights at the lake house when we were all happy, or pretending to be. Alex. The night nurse, Claire, brings me tea instead of sleeping pills. She's been here 3 nights, watching me stare at walls. Your wife's still in the waiting room. Which one is she looking at more, her phone or my brother? Neither. She's looking at your old photos. Crying. I finally opened Dad's letter. A pressed cornflower falls out from Mom's garden, the one she planted when Damien was born. The blue has faded, like all the truths I thought I knew. My dearest Alex, I'm writing this from your wedding reception. The string quartet is playing that song you and Liana fell in love to in Paris. Damien's watching her dance with you. He thinks no one notices, but a father sees everything. The way his smile slips when she kisses you. How his hands shake when he gives the best man speech. History has a way of repeating itself, son. My brother Thomas loved your mother first. The company battle wasn't about money. It was about her choosing me. Some hearts break clean. Others shatter and cut everyone around them. Remember when Damien had nightmares? Only you could calm him down. You'd tell him stories about brave knights and loyal brothers until he fell asleep holding your hand. Where did those brothers go, Alex? I see how Liana looks at him when she thinks you're not watching. The same way your mother once looked at Thomas, with guilt and possibility. Love isn't always a choice, but loyalty is. There's a business contingency plan attached, but that's not why I'm writing. I'm writing because you're my son, and you have my heart. The same heart that forgave Thomas even after he tried to destroy everything. The same heart that puts family above pride. Last week, I found Damien drunk in his office, staring at Liana's picture on your desk. He said, "Why does Alex get everything?" The same words Thomas spoke 30 years ago. Watch over him, even after whatever he's done. He's still that little boy who followed you everywhere, who just wanted to be you. And Liana. God. Alex. The way she says your name like a prayer. The way she touches her ring when she's nervous. Love like that doesn't die. It twists into something darker. Forgive them if you can. Not for them, but for the boy who taught his brother to ride a bike. For the man who danced in Paris rain. For yourself. I love you. Always and completely, Dad. The tears come silently, dropping onto Dad's fading words. On my phone, another photo from Liana. Us in Venice, my lips on her cheek as she laughs at something forever lost to time. Remember this? Her text reads. You said nothing could be as beautiful as my smile. When did you stop looking at me that way, Alex? The night nurse returns, sits quietly beside me. She reminds me of Mom, that same gentle strength. Your brother's here too now, she says softly. They don't speak to each other. Just wait. Like they're keeping vigil. For what? For forgiveness, maybe. Or punishment. Sometimes they look the same. My phone lights up. Damien. Remember the night Dad died? What he whispered to you before. I need to know, brother. Please. Another message from Liana. I still have your ring. I know I don't deserve it, but I can't let go. Like I can't forget that morning in Paris when you said forever wasn't long enough. It wasn't supposed to end like this. Valeria brings fresh coffee and yesterday's tears. She's known us since college, watched us fall in love, fall apart. Alex, she whispers, your mother's here. Mom enters in her old blue robe, the one she wore through every childhood fever and heartbreak. One look at Dad's letter and she knows. He wrote it the night before. She sits on my bed. Made me promise to give it to you only if love wasn't enough. Was it? I look at her, really look at her. For you and Dad? Was love enough? She traces the scar on my hand from punching a wall at his funeral. Love is always enough, baby. Just not always the way we expect. Through my window, I watch Liana in the waiting room. She's showing Damien an old video on her phone. My graduation? All of us laughing. She's crying. He's not touching her. They look less like lovers now, more like survivors of the same shipwreck. Do you think they meant to fall in love? I ask Mom. Or did they just fall into betrayal? Oh, sweetheart. She holds me like when I was small. Sometimes the heart chooses while the mind's still weighing consequences. Dawn paints the hospital walls pink as I read Dad's last words, hidden in the margin like a secret. P.S. The night you were born, I promised to teach you everything. But life's final lesson is one we learn alone. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing peace over pain. Choose peace, son. Choose life. I pick up my phone, tears blurring the screen. Lake House. Sunrise. Both of you. Time to talk about Dad's last words and why he really made me CEO. Outside my room, a brother and wife who betrayed me sit in silent vigil, waiting for either salvation or damnation. In my hands, a father's last letter teaches me that sometimes they're the same thing. The lake house looked exactly as it had 20 years ago when Dad taught us to fish. Even the old porch swing still creaked the same way. I sat there watching the sun rise, Dad's letter heavy in my pocket. They arrived separately. Liana first, then Damien 5 minutes later. Both looking like they hadn't slept in days. Both stopping short when they saw me on the swing. You look better, Liana said softly. The hospital. Amazing what happens when you're not actually dying. My voice was calmer than I felt. Sit. Both of you. They chose opposite ends of the porch. Not lovers now, just guilty survivors. Before you explain, I held up a hand as Damien opened his mouth. Let me tell you what Dad told me the night he died. The words only meant for me. Damien flinched. This had always been between us, Dad's last moments, his whispered confession. He said, watch them, Alex. They'll need you more than they know. I looked at them both. I thought he was delirious. But he saw it even then, didn't he? The way you looked at each other. Liana's hands twisted in her lap. Alex, please. When did it start? Really start? Not the affair, the feeling. Your wedding, Damien whispered. The rehearsal dinner. You were late because of work, and Liana was crying in the garden. I found her, and she looked at me like I used to look at you, I finished, watching Liana. Go on. Nothing happened then, she said quickly. Or for years after. We fought it. God, Alex, we fought it so hard. Until? Dad's funeral. Damien's voice broke. You were so strong, handling everything. I was falling apart, and Liana. She held me when I broke down. One touch led to another, and... Stop. I stood, needing to move. I don't need details. I need to know why the lies. Why not just tell me? They exchanged glances. Here it was, the moment of truth. The inheritance clause, Liana began. No. I cut her off. The real reason. Not the business excuse. Silence stretched. Finally, Damien spoke, his voice small like when we were kids. Because you're you, Alex. Perfect eldest son. Perfect husband. Perfect brother. How could we tell you we'd betrayed the one person who never betrayed anyone? I pulled out Dad's letter. He knew. About all of it. The feelings. The potential for betrayal. He knew and still loved us all. Their faces crumpled as I read parts of the letter aloud. About love and choices. About forgiveness. Why are you sharing this? Liana asked, tears streaming. Why not destroy us like we destroyed you? I looked at the lake where Dad taught us about life through fishing metaphors. Because he was right. Love isn't about deserving. It's about choosing. What are you saying? Damien stood, hope and fear warring in his eyes. I'm saying I choose peace. Not forgiveness, not yet, but peace. I pulled out another envelope. Divorce papers, Liana, and transfer papers, Damien. The Singapore branch is yours, far from here, for me. Alex. They spoke together, stopped. I don't want explanations or apologies. I want you both to leave. Build whatever life you think you can have together. Just don't come back. The company, Damien started, will survive without either of you. Like I will. Liana stepped toward me, her hand outstretched. I stepped back. Your ring, she whispered, pulling it from her pocket. Keep it, like the memories. They're all you get to keep. As they walked to their cars, Damien turned back. That night, what did Dad really say to you? I watched them, my wife, my brother, my deepest wounds. He said, love them enough to let them go. They drove away as the sun cleared the trees. I sat on the porch swing, feeling lighter than I had in months. Mom found me there an hour later. You didn't destroy them, she said, sitting beside me. No, I set myself free. She held me as I finally cried. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I was finally ready to find. 6 months after the lake house confrontation, I sat in a small cafe in Cusco, Peru, holding Dad's old journal. The leather was worn soft, pages dog-eared with dreams he never lived. I traced his handwriting describing Machu Picchu. Maybe someday, when the company's stable, when the boys are grown. My coffee had gone cold. I'd been sitting here for hours, reading random entries. Dad planning trips he never took, marking places on maps that never saw his footsteps. Always putting it off for tomorrow, for someday, for later. Until later never came. The day I signed Liana's divorce papers, Mom found me in his study, surrounded by his things. Alex. Her voice soft, worried. Talk to me, baby. Did you know? I held up his passport. Dad only used this 3 times? 3 times in 30 years. She sat beside me, running her fingers over the worn leather. He was saving all his dreams for retirement, but he never got there. I pulled out an envelope. I'm stepping down as CEO. Because of them? No need to specify who them meant. No. I showed her Dad's journal. Because of him. Because sometimes the biggest betrayal is the one we commit against ourselves, putting off living until it's too late. She read a few pages, tears falling. He wanted to see the sunset over Santorini. I'm going there next week. I took her hand. Come with me. She shook her head, smiling. My life is here. But yours is waiting out there. Over the next months, I traced Dad's unfinished dreams. The pyramids at dawn, his sketches in hand. The Colosseum in Rome, reading his notes about ancient architecture. Thai temples where he'd wanted to learn meditation. Each place, I wrote 2 journals. One for me, one for Mom. Sometimes I'd find pressed flowers in Dad's pages and add my own beside them, decades apart but sharing the same dream. Valeria kept me updated, but gently. No business reports, just family news. Mom's roses winning the county fair. My old dog having puppies. Small moments of normal life continuing without me. Then the news I knew would come. Liana and Damien's wedding announcement in Singapore. I was in Venice that day, sitting in the same cafe where I'd first told Liana I loved her. It hurt less than I expected. I sent them a postcard of the Venice canals. No message, just the image. They sent back a photo. Them feeding pigeons in a Singapore park, looking happy but somehow incomplete. On the back, Damien's messy scrawl. Miss you, big brother. I kept the photo but didn't reply. Some bridges take longer to rebuild. Now, in this Cusco cafe, a voice interrupted my memories. That journal's seen better days. I looked up. A woman with kind eyes and an Australian accent gestured to Dad's book. Sorry, she smiled. I'm nosy about books. I'm Naomi. Alexander. I found myself smiling back. And it's not nosy. It's my father's journal. I'm visiting all the places he never got to see. Did he give you a list? He died before he could. I showed her his Machu Picchu sketches, but he left maps of his dreams. She sat without asking, ordered coffee without hesitation. Tell me about him? And suddenly, I wanted to. Not the story of betrayal and business, but of a father who drew pictures of places he yearned to see, who taught his sons about life through fishing metaphors, who loved so completely that even his planning for their betrayal came from love. He believed in second chances, I found myself saying, in choosing peace over pride. Smart man. Naomi's eyes crinkled when she smiled. Is that why you're here? Second chances? More like first chances. Really living instead of just existing. My phone buzzed. A text from Mom. Dad's roses bloomed today. Yellow ones, his favorites. The garden misses you. But bloom where you're planted, my sweet boy. Naomi saw my eyes water. Without a word, she reached across and squeezed my hand. A gesture of simple human comfort, asking nothing, offering everything. I'm heading to Machu Picchu tomorrow, she said. Want to join? I make excellent trail snacks. For the first time in a year, I felt something stir in my chest. Not pain or regret, just possibility. That night, I wrote in my journal, Dear Dad, I think I finally understand. Life isn't about the betrayals we survive or the love we lose. It's about the courage to keep our hearts open, to find beauty in unexpected places, to choose living over hiding. Today, I chose living. I sent one last postcard to Singapore. On it, I wrote, the sunrise here makes me think of fishing with two little boys who once promised to be brothers forever. Some promises change shape, but never truly break. Be happy. Then I turned off my phone and went to meet Naomi for dinner. She told me about teaching Aboriginal children in Australia, about losing her mother young, about choosing adventure over safety. As she talked, I felt Dad's presence, not in grief or guilt, but in joy. In the simple pleasure of two people sharing stories over wine, in the promise of tomorrow's sunrise over ancient ruins, in the quiet certainty that love doesn't end with betrayal. It just changes course, like a river finding new paths to the sea. Somewhere, I knew Dad was smiling.